Spanish football this season? Oh, it's been wild. One side of El Clasico is bathing in glory, lifting trophies, breaking records and playing champagne football. The other, well, they're counting Super Cups and excuses. But this wasn't just about what happened on the pitch. No, this was a season shaped by decisions made in boardrooms. While one president built a football empire, the other was too busy chasing a fantasy. This is how Joan Laporta outsmarted Florentino Perez. Barcelona were not just good this season, they were clinical, disciplined, and above all focused. This team knew what it wanted from day one, and they delivered. They wrapped up La Liga with games to spare. It wasn't even close. They dominated games with control, pressed with purpose, and you could see a clear structure, something they've lacked in recent years. Players knew their roles, rotations made sense, and for the first time in a while, Barcelona weren't relying on individual brilliance. It was the system that shined. Then came the Copa del Rey. It wasn't handed to them either. They had to dig deep, especially in that intense semi-final. But this team knew how to handle pressure. They stayed compact when they had to and exploded in transition when it mattered. It was balanced football, and more importantly, it was winning football. In the Supercopa, they made a statement early in the season. That win gave them confidence. It reminded everyone, especially Madrid, that Barcelona weren't here to rebuild slowly. They were here to win now. And then there's the Champions League run. No one expected them to reach the semi-finals at the start of the season, but they did. They handled group stage business like a seasoned side. In the knockouts, they didn't collapse under the lights. They played with intelligence. Even though they fell short of the final, this run proved they were back among Europe's elite. But it's not just about trophies. It's about how they won. This team played with identity. You could see tactical patterns in every match. You could see a coach's fingertips all over the system. And most importantly, you could see players developing. Lamine Yamal matured. Pedri got more consistent. Even veterans like Lewandowski adapted to the system and contributed selflessly. Barcelona didn't just win this season, they set a foundation. A structure is in place, the dressing room is aligned, and for the first time in a long time, the football they played matched their ambition. But on the other end, Real Madrid, the kings of Europe, ended this season with just one big trophy, the UEFA Super Cup. A one-match title was played in August. Sure, it's a European trophy on paper, but let's be honest, it's the least important of all the ones they contested. It's like winning the warm-up and losing the actual match. Because here's the real story. They lost La Liga, they lost the Copa del Rey, and they lost the Supercopa, all to Barcelona. That's not just a bad season, that's humiliation. This wasn't just a trophyless season, it was a full-scale surrender. Madrid didn't just come second, they came second to their biggest rivals in every major competition. That stings in a way no statistic can describe. And it wasn't about injuries or bad luck. This wasn't a team that fought and just came up short. No, they looked disjointed, disconnected, like a group of talented individuals forced into a system they didn't believe in. Every big game exposed a structural flaw. They struggled defensively, looked confused going forward, and tactically, there was no cohesion. And when they meet Barcelona, they were outplayed, outclassed, outthought. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you. This season didn't fall apart because of one game or one mistake. It was a result of a series of wrong decisions from the very top. And that's where the conversation needs to go, because Real Madrid didn't lose trophies on the pitch, they lost them in the boardroom. This season for Real Madrid was built on wrong decisions. This Real Madrid team didn't fail by accident. It wasn't just bad luck or a dip in form. This was a failure of planning, of footballing priorities, and at the heart of it all is one man, Florentino Perez. You see, when the season started, the warning signs were already there. Eder Militao had a serious ACL injury. David Alaba was struggling with recurring muscle issues. That's your starting centre-back pairing. Any serious football mind would have seen the urgency. You need a new centre-back. Not just a stopgap, but a reliable, top-level defender to stabilise the backline. Yes, Perez and his team went for Lenny Yoro. But did they go all in? No, they bid, they negotiated, but when Lille raised the price, they backed off. For a club like Madrid, this was never about money. This wasn't a financial decision, it was about priorities. They simply didn't see the defensive crisis as urgent. And now, Euro is at Man United, and from what they've seen, he would have been perfect. Calm under pressure, he reads the game well, doesn't rush into tackles. He's a classic cover defender, the exact type Madrid needed next to a physically dominant player like Rudiger. That's a key point. Modern defenses rely on balance, one aggressive front-footed defender who wins duels, and one composed reader of the game who covers space and tracks runners. Madrid never had that this season. Instead, they kept patching the backline with fullbacks like Vázquez or rotated midfielders like Tchouaméni, and that led to chaos. The communication was off, positioning was inconsistent, and big games exposed the cracks. That's why they conceded over 15 goals to Barcelona across all competitions. That stat alone speaks volumes. But the centre-back saga wasn't even the biggest issue. That came with Kylian Mbappé. Now let's be clear, Mbappé is world-class. But Real Madrid didn't sign him because they needed him. They signed him because Perez was obsessed. This wasn't about building a team, it was about branding, about headlines, about recreating the Cristiano Ronaldo effect. And here's where it backfired. Madrid had something really solid last season. Vinicius on the left, Bellingham playing behind the striker, midfield fluidity, and defensive balance. But with Mbappé coming in, Ancelotti had to tear that system apart to make room. Vinicius, who had his best season cutting in from the left, now had to adjust. Bellingham, who was thriving in a free role, became more static. Even the midfield dynamic shifted to accommodate the Frenchman. Worse still, there's no real number 9 from the bench. Joselu was a temporary solution. Mbappé isn't a pure striker. He drifts wide, likes space, wants freedom, which is fine if your team is built around him. But Madrid wasn't. The signing disrupted what was working. It wasn't football logic, it was market logic. And here's the thing, Ancelotti never asked for Mbappé. The signing was driven by the president. When a manager as respected as Ancelotti isn't backed with players that fit his vision, the system breaks down. You could see it in the performances, the team lacked cohesion. They weren't playing with identity. It felt like 11 great players trying to make something happen on the fly. And then there's the midfield problem. Everyone knew Toni Kroos was going to retire. He'd hinted at it multiple times, but there was no succession plan. Luka Modric is 39. Valverde, Camavinga, and Tchouaméni are fantastic, but none of them are tempo setters like Kroos. There's no one who can sit deep, control the rhythm, and play those laser-guided passes to open up space. In modern football, especially against teams that press high, you need that kind of player to calm the game and dictate the tempo. Florentino didn't act. There was no plan to fill that gap. Instead, they kept focusing on star power. And that's really the core of the issue. Perez has stopped thinking like a football man. He's thinking like a businessman, chasing marquee names, building marketing empires, creating narratives. But while he's doing that, the actual football, the thing that matters most, is suffering. This isn't the first time either. Madrid's greatest runs came when there was a balance between ambition and structure, when big signings were backed by smart squad planning. But this season, it was imbalanced at every level, tactically, structurally, and mentally. The result? 3 major trophies lost to Barcelona, a disjointed team, and a manager stuck trying to make sense of a squad that never fit together. Madrid didn't lose this season on the pitch, they lost it at the very top. While Real Madrid was spiraling with a squad full of stars but no structure, Barcelona were quietly building something smart, sustainable, and deadly effective. And at the heart of it all, Joan Laporta. See, Laporta didn't just wake up and stumble into a successful season. This was intentional. This was long-term thinking, and it started with one of the most important decisions he made in recent years: hiring Hansi Flick. Now, that could have gone differently. At the time, there were other names floating around, big names, managers who would have brought press coverage, fan excitement, and all the usual noise. But Laporta didn't care about noise. He cared about identity and results. So instead of going for someone with media hype, he went for a pure tactician, someone who had built a treble-winning Bayern Munich side and understood how to structure a team front to back. People were skeptical. Flick had just come off a rough stint with the German national team, but Laporta looked beyond that. He didn't judge Flick on a short international campaign. He looked at his club record, his approach, and his understanding of modern football, and he made the call. That decision alone changed everything. The first major shift was how Flick was allowed to lead. Laporta gave him the freedom to assess the squad and make real decisions. Take Rafinha, for example. At the beginning of the summer, Rafinha was practically on his way out. The club wanted to sell him to raise funds. It made financial sense. Big fee, high salary, and inconsistent form. But when Flick came in and saw him in training, he said, "No, keep him." Laporta listened. That's what separates good leadership from great leadership, trusting the people you hire. And Rafinha this season, he's a different player. He's been decisive in big matches, tactically disciplined, and arguably one of the most important players under Flick. Then there's Dani Olmo, another key move that shows just how tuned in Laporta has become to football structure. Flick specifically requested Olmo, someone he'd worked with, someone who could play multiple attacking roles and fit the high-tempo, intelligent style he wanted. Laporta didn't hesitate. He got the deal done. Not a mega name, but the right name. That's the key difference. But the most important piece in this whole puzzle? The academy. Laporta has been patiently rebuilding La Masia's pipeline for the past few years. Not just promoting random youngsters for the sake of it, but actually creating a structure around youth development. Investing in better scouting at the youth level, improving facilities, and making sure the transition between the youth sides and the senior team is seamless. And now we're seeing the results. Players like Lamine Yamal, Fermin Lopez, and Casado didn't just come into the squad, they became important. Not because they were forced in, but because they were prepared. They understood the system, they played without fear, and more importantly, they played with purpose. This wasn't luck, this was a direct result of Laporta's commitment to building a sustainable football model. While Madrid was chasing marquee players, Laporta was building a team. He understood that dominance in football doesn't come from how many followers your new striker has. It comes from how well your squad fits together, how your coach works with the board, and how much you trust your philosophy. And that's exactly what this season was. A triumph of philosophy. Barcelona didn't just win, they dominated in the right moments, with a clear identity and with a core of players who weren't just talented but aligned. You had youth blended with experience, a manager given full trust, and a president who never tried to overshadow the football department. The contrast couldn't be clearer. On one side you've got Perez, signing players like it's a fantasy team, forcing coaches to figure it out later. On the other hand, you've got Laporta, building from the bottom up, listening to his manager, trusting his scouts, backing his academy, and prioritizing football over PR. And if we're being honest, this season's results reflect exactly that. Barcelona took La Liga, the Copa del Rey, the Supercopa, and even more a deep Champions League run to the semi-finals. Not because they had the biggest names, but because they had the best structure. Laporta didn't just revive a struggling Barcelona, he laid the foundation for a new era. A smarter, more balanced, more football-focused Barcelona. And the scariest part? They're just getting started. If this season was a statement, then next season could be the beginning of a real era. Because everything Barcelona built this year wasn't just to win trophies, it was to set the tone for what's coming. And honestly, if you look closely at what Laporta and Flick are setting up, you can already see the signs of a team preparing to dominate long-term. But what do you think? Can they dominate again next season? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to watch our last video.